Thank you so much, Volker, for the presentation and the kind words. We are first of all, we would like to thank both you and the Plamadiso organization in particular for inviting us both to discuss on this particular topic relating to the Data Governance Act and how to interpret it in the light of this business model perspective based on both our research. The aim of our presentation is to trigger and to bring forward the legal and the technical frictions that will arise in the market as a consequence of the European Union's digital strategy, and in particular in the application of the Data Governance Act. This is a very much needed approach and multidisciplinary talk that brings together the policy, the technical, and the legal topics. We also hope to trigger that discussion on the interpretation of the different regulations and how to deal with these friction points. Although, as we discussed earlier, maybe we raise more doubts than answers. To do that, I will first analyze the broad spectrum of the Union's policy, objectives, and perspectives for the coming years in terms of the digital arena, to then delve into the notions of the Data Governance Act. Later on, Santiago will present his own research and findings relating to the transformation of data in the marketplace from a technical perspective. When setting the stage, actually, of this digital strategy, we must first give a first step back to place ourselves where things stand currently in terms of data flows and exchanges happening in digital markets. On one side, they have been analyzed in depth from a myriad of viewpoints, and the big tech in particular, the big tech digital platforms, you have the examples there, have particularly engaged in the bartering of data with their users. As set out by their own terms of service that they impose, the users agree that their personal and non-personal data will be collected and processed into the digital platforms systems so that they can later be combined and cross-used across their services. The user thus is catered this digital service in exchange for the processing of their data. There are certainly many ways to frame this problem and the different lenses. For instance, if we go and take recourse to Lessig's code of law, one could argue that the activities of these operators constitute what we could say as private power online. And it is extremely difficult to counteract this movement through norms or laws. There is also the argument to be made that the operations of the big tech are based on the exploitation of user data. For instance, as we saw in the recent or not so recent Facebook case before the German Competition Authority, or the more recent Google case brought by the German Competition Authority by applying its Section 19A instrument. Alongside this phenomenon, given that data are principally non-rivalrous and may be deemed valuable depending on the context on which they are applied, they are not exclusively a tool in the hands of the big tech. Metaphors in this sense abound in considering the value and the potential transformation that we can subject data to, stemming from oil, energy, or water. Descending the esoteric to the practical, the fact is that data brokers and data marketplaces are streamlined across different industries. Against this framework, this broader framework, the European Union issued subsequently two different strategies in shaping the data-driven markets of the European Union. The first of them was the Shaping Europe's Digital Future strategy, which is progressively being rolled out via regulations that curb the private power of digital platforms and also the dynamics resulting from the application of their market power, basically. The narrative revolving around this first digital strategy is to discontinue the power dynamics that have been applied up until this moment, that have eroded, for example, data protection, the exercise of fundamental rights, or in my case of specialization, the correct functioning of competition. A few examples of these types of and these pieces of regulation include the Digital Services Act, the Digital Markets Act, or the ongoing and discussion revolving around the AI Act. The legal stance of this strategy is to protect society in its many forms, basically in a vertical manner, that is, as opposed, for example, to other instruments that were introduced in the Union, such as the GDPR, that applies to all sectors of the economy. Now we have that these instruments, or most of them, apply only to selected undertakings that bear most of the responsibility in this motion of erosion that we have spoken about earlier. The second data strategy that we have, the stricto sensu data strategy, has been followed with this introduction of both the Data Governance Act, which has been passed and is currently applicable, and the soon-to-be law Data Act. As opposed to the Shaping Europe's Digital Future strategy, the data strategy is not so much about this sense of protectionism, but about fostering new opportunities for European businesses in data marketplaces. The strategy, in this sense, seeks to reconcile the economic goals of the Union by enhancing the capacity of alternative operators to realize the full potential of data. The strategy does not apply to the exclusion of big tech, but rather it is directed at supporting this shift towards alternative business models revolving around the reliance on data. If one, and moving forward to the Data Governance Act, if one looks closer at its provisions and its objectives, this is precisely the idea that permeates the whole regulation. The DGA is designed around the objective of counteracting the perspective and the dynamics of the big tech, of these main digital platforms, by fostering innovation at the Union level in the data sharing environment. The regulatory instrument is inspired by this distributive function, if you would, to level the playing field in favor of economic operators to operate, to cater services so that they can too profit from the value generated by flows and exchanges involving data. The key concept that looms over the whole regulation under the DGA is the concept of data intermediaries, which are operators which will be certified directly as such, so that they do not incur in this excesses, this erosion that we talked about earlier. This is the reason behind the fact that data intermediaries must be thought of as being founded on two main elements by the application of the DGA. On one side, neutrality, and on the other side, structural separation. The element of neutrality entails that the data intermediary must act beyond its pure commercial interest, so that it must act not only with this interest in mind, but also in the data subject's best interests, even if they are involved in this commercial capacity. So they are not whole, and they are not thought of as so extractive in nature. The obligation of neutrality thus compels data intermediaries riding on these imbalances in bargaining power and information asymmetries that always characterize the types of transactions that we had with relation to big tech. On the other hand, structural separation entails in practice that the data intermediary, regardless of the form that it adopts as a commercial data marketplace or a data altruism organization, must separate its activities accordingly. In this regard, the data intermediation services must be provided by the intermediary via a separate legal entity. It cannot be used for any other purpose aside from the improvement of its own intermediation services, and the commercial terms that it offers to its users shall not be dependent upon the data subject's use of any other of its own services. Both of these characteristics are key to understanding how data intermediaries are devised in the DGA, despite that in practice they may adopt many different forms, which have already been permeating, as we will see later, in the data marketplaces. The characteristic that must be always present, however, is that of the existence of a commercial relationship. In the absence of such a relationship, we will not be within the scope of Article 211 of the DGA. In this line, you can find a few examples of those forms, but the DGA envisages three possible designs for the intermediation and the catering of the intermediation services. First, between data holders and potential data users. Second, between data subjects themselves and potential data users, such as, for example, data unions. And third, via data cooperatives, which seek to strengthen the position of individuals in making informed choices before consenting to data use. So now I'm going to pass on to Santiago. Okay, we cannot hear you. Now.
Hi, now you can hear me. I was muted. Okay, so thanks very much, Alba. Let me first introduce you how this talk was conceived from the very beginning. We were having a coffee in Madrid Center, both of us. You know, I was discussing with Alba my research, and she was talking to me about all the fancy stuff that she's doing in the digital and in the competition analysis. And we realized that what I was looking into the market and the directions of the market were kind of contradictory to what the regulation was aiming at. No? So, well, it's good. First, it's good that lawyers take coffees with technicians, and we have fancy discussions of very different topics. No, so that's good. I think this is good. This is also what I like from Plamadiso. No? It's a multidisciplinary community. So welcome and thanks very much, Volker, for this opportunity. No? So what was that puzzled me when having this coffee? No? Well, during the course of the PhD that I defended last May, I did a survey of companies that are already trading data over the internet. Look, there are lots of companies that are already trading data over the internet, and there are data intermediaries that are already working. No? In a survey that we published last year in Sigmund Record, you can find the link below. In this survey, we checked more than 190 companies that are offering data products and services. And we wanted to see, first of all, before giving some content to the PhD, we wanted to see how data is being traded nowadays and to understand the value chain. We took more than 100 of these companies, and we started to find information about how these companies are trading data, how they are pricing data, how they are rewarding users, what kind of data they are trading. These simple questions are not so, they were not known to us at the beginning of this PhD. No? And let me briefly give you some ideas that we came across in this research that are relevant to this talk. No? First, we characterize, if we go to the next slide, we characterized 10 different business models, but at a high level, we spotted three main families of business models, depending on whom target their services at. No? Depending if they target data owners or data holders, if they target buyers, or if they mediate between them. So on the left, you can see data management systems that help companies manage the data, the loads of data that they have. And they also allow to share securely between the organization, and even in some cases outside of the organization, this data. On the right, we have lots of companies that are data or service providers, and they provide data or services. And in the paper and in the blog post, you will find that the boundaries between data and service providers are often blurry. That focus on buyers, on the users, and they pack, they enrich, they provide service based on data, and they focus on their users, on the data or service buyers. And there are some data marketplaces that are in the middle, that are data marketplaces mediated platforms that put in touch data owners or data holders with the data buyers. If we go to the next slide, we give some details for these three business models. On the left, data management systems are not only used by by corporations, but we also have under this big bucket of business models, we also included the PIMS, the Personal Information Management Systems. This is a quite new business model that uses the GDPR in Europe or the CCPA in California, in personal data protection law, in order to allow users to exert their rights to erase, to have access to the data, the personal data that data providers or entities providing services in the internet have about them. No? So they allow to manage them, and surprise, some of them, they are thinking of piling up a lot of data from different users and putting it to the market. So they are, some of them are targeting or are trying to build data marketplaces on top of that. Also, data management systems, some of them, example given Snowflake, they are also building marketplaces to go to the market as well. No? On the right, we have data providers. Data providers are not covered, are not data intermediaries as such. They usually provide services to end users. They sell data or services based on data they own, or they collect from the internet, or they buy from partners, but they don't mediate between the partner, which is their data provider, but usually the users don't know which are the partners of these data providers. And they sell services and data to end users. So they are not data intermediary platforms as such. But again, surprise, some data providers are thinking that these data marketplaces and secure data exchanges can be a very nice complement to their services to their users. No? That was one of the findings of this survey. In the middle, again, data marketplaces, they are public or semi-private mediation platforms. What this is clearly, and it's covered in the interpretation of the DGA as a data intermediary. Semi-private means that they ask for some kind of register of buyers and sellers to use the platform. Not everybody can use it. You have to go through a kind of registry to enter there. And well, they transact with different types of data. We have general purpose data marketplaces that train any kind of data, but we have also niche data marketplaces that train specific types of data. And these specializations allows them to focus on specific problems, on specific types of data. Because the one thing that we learn is that what we call the data economy is very heterogeneous. We are talking about audios, videos, images. We are talking about text for text descriptions, structured data of very different types, marketing, financial, many types of data. In the next slide, actually, we put some types of the data. This for the different companies that belong in these three high-level business models we found. Here we can see what kind of data you can find there. Of course, in the data management systems, half of them were PIMS, half of them were corporate management platforms that dealing with corporate or whatever kind of data, and some of them specialized in healthcare, no? As you can see there. Data marketplaces, we have, I think it was 12, 15 data marketplaces that are, we call them general purpose, trading any kind of data, but the latest data marketplaces are focusing on specific types of data. No? And in data providers, you can find pretty much everything, but most of them are related to marketing, most of them are related to contact and financial data. As you can see, 2/3 of the sample are related to that. But you can find pretty much data providers for everything. Here are some examples, as you can see, regarding owners, the data management systems we have, you can identify there some well-known PIMs and well-known management systems, and so data marketplaces and data providers. You can find more details in this study. We went further. We not only studied the specific companies, but we also scraped metadata of what kind of data products were being offered in the market. We did that, and we scraped information from more than 200,000 products from 10 data marketplaces plus, and this data includes information from more than 2,000 data providers, individual data providers. A very nice or a very puzzling finding that we had is that you can see that there are some data marketplaces where you can find that there are some data products that are non-paid. This includes mainly open data that the data marketplaces put there, and also some samples of other products. No? And between the 5% of products that were paid, what was interesting is that 2/3 of them didn't specify any prices. Price is upon request. You start by asking the buyer, or they start by asking the buyers, and there I mean data marketplaces or data providers themselves. They ask you, okay, who you are, what you want my data for, these kind of things. Then they customize the price, and they presumably customize the product as well. Because this is one of the main problems of data, no? That is very customizable, it's very versionable. So bottom line, if we go to the next slide, in the last one you had this was another paper that this was the one that I presented in ICD last April, and it was about understanding the price of data in data marketplaces. You can find easily in my webpage, in LinkedIn, and in ACM. So bottom line, what we found is that the market is moving from horizontally integrated monolithic data providers, the old data marketplaces that were big data marketplaces trying to sell whatever kind of data, to a specific data exchange platform. And most interestingly, we found that data trading is kind of commodity, becoming kind of a commodity. And this goes totally against the spirit of the DGA, where we want that data trading is somehow neutral. But the fact is that the most used data marketplaces are built upon a specific service, upon a specific management platform, etc. This is good on the one hand, this is good for the business, because you already have a lot of users that are interested in marketing data, that are interested in geospatial data in a system, and you put a data marketplace there, and you already have users. Whereas bootstrapping a new business model, bootstrapping a new data marketplace is always a problem, because you have to earn users from both sides. Actually, this is what is happening with PIMS. PIMS is an absolutely new business model, and what is the problem that they are facing? And some of them have died in the meantime, no? in this road. No? They are struggling to acquire users because the value of data depends on the number, or it's very dependent on the volume. So they are struggling to acquire the minimum number of users for them to be valuable in the market. So there we go. Give back to you the floor, Alba. Let's go to the points of frictions.
Yes, bearing in mind all of this, the introduction I did, and also the background that Santiago provided, we also wanted to bring forward some points of friction relating to the application of the DGA based on this research. On the legal side, one of the main points of friction that we have detected of applying the DGA is actually how it will reconcile and how will it be interpreted coherently with other instruments of the regulation of the European Union. For example, this analysis is particularly salient in the case of the GDPR. Despite that the DGA, in this sense, sparks the own steps to European innovation in data marketplaces, which has been cemented and taken place, it is also at odds with the regulation under the GDPR, insofar as different concepts are used and streamlined under both regulatory instruments. For instance, the set of legal bases which allow a data controller or a data processor to process data under Article 6 of the GDPR is at a crossroads with the powers vested upon data holders pursuant to the DGA. On the side of the GDPR, they are legitimized to do so, but it is yet unclear whether the DGA will apply that regime in parallel or on top of it, or it will disallow it. In principle, also the DGA confers upon the data holder the right to grant access or to share data concerning the data subject with an unlimited number of third parties for unspecified purposes that also contravenes the purpose limitation principle of the GDPR. So there we see an example of those existing legal frictions and how they should be reconciled in favor of sparking this new motion of innovation and the new forms of data monetization, if that is possible, in the European Union, so that the GDPR is not completely overridden and obscured for the sake of these new forms introduced by the DGA. And now I also want to hand off the control to Santiago, because there are also technical frictions.
Yeah, from a technical perspective, if we go to the next slide, I have briefly discussed before some of these points of frictions. But for instance, there are some data marketplaces that are somehow tied to existing platforms and complementing them. No? In GIS, pretty much most of the systems of the platforms that are dealing with spatio-temporal data are including or embedding data marketplaces on top of it. ArcGIS, Cartor, here, the three of them have their own data marketplaces, accessible only by users of those systems, of those platforms, intended to use, to trade data for being used inside the platform. And yeah, of course, that's great, because the moment you put up this data marketplace, you already have a lot of people that are using these platforms and that will be pretty much interested. It's already targeted the audience in taking this geospatio-temporal data. On the right, you have Lotami, the Trade Desk, LiveRun. These are the some of the so-called data brokers that are dealing with advertising in the internet. Pretty much some of them, they have an audience data marketplace built on top of the platform, so that advertisers are able to purchase data from different companies to build their audiences. So you already have a lot of people, you already have a lot of companies that will be interested in acquiring this data. So I built in a data marketplace on on my platform, and I already have a lot of customers there. No? AWS Marketplace has also data products that are intended to be delivered using AWS services, S3 buckets, and so on and so forth. So there are some complementarity between the data marketplaces and some services, and how this reconciles with the principles of neutrality of Article 212A or an independency 212B. No, so that's the point here. And if we go to the next slide, another issue is regarding pricing, which should be non-discriminatory. So I'm not saying that they are doing, of course, but it's truly difficult, and it's first of all, there is no transparency on prices. Second, it's difficult that there is a transparency of prices because of the characteristics of data, because data is versionable. No? So you can basically, out of your data, you can build an infinite number of versions of data products, each with different prices. It's really a challenge, or it's going to be a challenge to ensure non-discrimination in this scenario. And there I can give you some hint. There is in the field of data pricing, there is a community that was actually taking this into account. In data pricing, there is this concept of arbitrage. No? When you design a pricing scheme, you don't want that a buyer acquires a lower cost data product with which he or she can infer a higher value data product. So because it allows to make arbitrage, so your prices are not coherent. And this has to do with the discrimination. The discrimination, we don't want that a product that is superior in the sense that can be explained or built from another is sold to another person with a lower price. So I see some similarities there. There is this query pricing school of data pricing that is very interesting and has very interesting work here. But here, again, I don't have any answer. I see that there are lots of challenges here in dealing with non-discrimination in the prices of data intermediaries. No? And if we go to the next one, we have some architectures of data marketplaces, in particular those that are intended to trade data for training artificial intelligence and machine learning models, and also federated learning that tend to value and price even data based on its contribution to a task. Therefore, you can see that a piece of data can be sold for a certain task low price because it's not bringing too much value, but in other cases, because it brings it increases a lot the value or the accuracy of a certain model, then it is sold for much more price. So how this again reconciles with non-discrimination principles and so on and so forth. Well, here you can discuss that I am not selling data. I am selling models. I am eager to read this paper that we were talking about in the beginning of the talk. No, but this is another scenario where this non-discrimination is also challenging to be applied. No? And that's pretty much everything. Again, thanks very much, Volker, for this invitation. I hope you find the discussion interesting. And we are eager to discuss anything in the Q&A and happy to be in touch after the talk as well. Thanks.